with this next guy, and that is Tyler Williams. Ryan, this is a
Mm-hmm.
young man that I think is a really interesting player because you talk about a range. On 3 has him at number 57. Rivals has him barely in the top 200. 247 Sports has him as a 4-star, but he's not ranked in their top 247. And ESPN hasn't even taken the time to rank him yet, to grade him yet.
That's crazy.
Which is like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, what would you say you do here at this point?
Seems to be a little bit of a trend with ESPN, not throwing shade anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not good. It's not good. So Tyler Williams, ranking wise, I kind of get, this is one, however, that I kind of get. He's a lot like Braylon James in that he is the guy that the gap between the ceiling and the floor right now is pretty big for me. Very similar players in a lot of ways. And let's just kind of dive into the film, Ryan. This is a kid that right now, from a recruiting standpoint, Notre Dame, we didn't say this too with Jaden Greathouse, but Jaden Greathouse already has 2 visits set up to Notre Dame. As Ryan reported, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago? He's going to be up for the blue gold game, correct? And then also he's already set up a visit to come back and work out on camp. Now, that's one of the things I love about him. He is not coming back to campus this summer to prove anything to Notre Dame. The Notre Dame staff loves him. Like let me say that. The Notre Dame staff is on Team Ryan on the Jaden Greathouse thing. Like, they are Team Ryan. They love this kid. So just so we're clear, for me, I love the kid as far as like I want him. My question is just like the ceiling, but he's a good football player. Ryan thinks he's going to get a lot better. Notre Dame thinks he can get better as well. But even if he doesn't, they don't care because they love what he is now. Like, Notre Dame loves Jaden Greathouse. Notre Dame also and Jaden Greathouse seems to really like Notre Dame. This is one where Chancey Stuckey's relationship with him has been very beneficial. Tyler Williams is kind of the opposite. They're working to build up a relationship with him, and it's taken a while. And I don't know if there's a ton of interest on his end in Notre Dame, even though he's a really good student right now. But he's an intriguing player. Let's dive into the film a little bit on Tyler Williams from Lakewood, Florida High School. Interesting kid. He's listed anywhere from 6'3" to 6'5", Ryan. I don't know if he's 6'5". He's at least 6'3". But this is one of my favorite receivers. This is a kid that I think has a lot of talent potential. Not really sure. Again, needs a lot of work. But this right here is what I love. I think this kid can absolutely fly. I think his long speed is outstanding. Like, this kid is going to make a ton. This is the kind of kid that could have 1,000 yards receiving and catch 48 balls. Like, he could have a Justin Ross type of season in college, meaning just from because remember when Justin Ross as a freshman had like 49 catches for 1,000 yards?
Yep.
Just, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying this kid's Justin Ross, but look, this kid is an athletic kid. I mean, goodness gracious. Look at that leap, that balance. You talk about like hitting the ground running, like, goodness, you almost don't even see it. You almost don't see him leap over that. But look right there, bam, he hurdles. I mean, it's like, I don't know if this kid runs track, but I'll bet you $100 next time I see that this kid's a hurdler in high school.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it at all. I mean, if Notre Dame comp real quick, like, this is Equanimeous St. Brown to me.
Yes,
like long,
a faster version of EQ. Yes,
yeah, exactly. Yes. I mean, EQ was a 4.4 something athlete, right? Like, this kid's probably even a little bit faster, but like I just see similar frame and just how he wins. I see it.
This is what makes me think this is a track kid. Look at his form. This is sprinter form. That right there, that's sprinter form. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be shocked if this kid's not a sprinter. But he's a good football player too. Like, and he's going to get bigger. He's going to get a lot stronger. Like, this is a kid that's got, to me, he has one of the highest ceilings in the class that I've seen so far.
It's fair.
I mean, there's a lot to work on here. He doesn't really run routes. He just kind of runs fast past everybody. He catches the ball well, but not like great. At times, you see some really impressive ball skills. At times, you see a kid that's learning. But this is what I mean. Oh my gosh, this kid's athletic. This is a really good football player.
High stepping on him, man. High stepping on him. Oh.
I don't understand how anyone can watch this kid and say he's anything but a top 100 player. I don't understand it. I don't know how you can not have him in the top 100.
You know what I think? You know what I think is a fascinating conversation on this kid, Brian. I actually think this kid has relatively high floor because he could be a very good departmentalized deep threat at worst, right? Like,
here's the issue. These next two plays are the issue, though. Watch his hands when the ball's coming to him. Really stiff hands. Now watch him on this next one. This game-winning TD. He doesn't catch the ball super clean. You know what I mean? Like that would be maybe my one but that means you drop him from 40 to 80, not 195. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like he has good hands. Like sometimes he catches the ball really clean, sometimes he doesn't. But I think that can be worked on. You know what I mean? If you can do it sometimes, I think you can do it more. But you know who else double caught a lot but was still a phenomenal player? Michael Floyd.
Yeah, Michael Floyd. Yeah,
EQ did as well. EQ did as well. Miles Boykin wasn't always the cleanest catcher. He had kind of stiff hands, but he still caught it.
Absolutely.
And this kid's still learning how to play. Doesn't really use his hands a lot as a route runner. You know, doesn't really have great route running take. But like that right there, that's look at that. He snatches it out of the air. Like this is what I'm saying. Like sometimes he does it, and you're like, okay, he's got it in him, Ryan. That's my point. Like he's got it in him. He reminds me a lot of Kevin Austin in that regards. Like sometimes Kevin Austin catches the ball and you're like, boy, that guy's got great hands. And then other times you're like, this kid shouldn't even be on scholarship the way that he's attacking the football right now. Like, and he reminds me a little bit of that, but it can be taught. It can be improved upon because you do see it sometimes, but this is what you can't teach. I mean, this is like usually guys this long, Ryan, don't have the kind of hips and feet that he has. Usually they're just kind of straight line vertical guys. That's what I love so much about Braylon James, and it's what I love about Tyler Williams is they're not just long vertical guys. They can be that, but they're also like really athletic players.
Do you see him kind of a WX kind of kid then?
I think he's an X. I mean, I think he can do both, but I'm putting him at X because I am throwing him tunnels, I'm throwing him screens, I'm throwing him quick game, I'm throwing him on deep in cuts where he's working the middle of the field, coming in with all that space. I'm having him. I mean, he can take the top off the defense as good as anybody on the board right now. And just I love this kid. I mean, and I think you all can kind of hear it in my voice a little bit that this kid is a really, really good football player. I, for the life of me, don't understand why he's not ranked higher. I have no idea. I'm gonna ask around, but I mean, there's nothing. I mean, maybe he had like a bad camp somewhere, you know, like I remember Ronald Jones coming out of high school was a 5-star kid by Rivals. He goes to one of their camps. He gets like 5 reps because there was like so many running backs there and they dropped him way down. And this is a kid that I like 40 touchdowns in big time Texas football as a junior. And then he goes out as a senior and just dominates at the Under Armour game. And they're like, okay, he's a highly ranked guy again. I'm like, no kidding. Your camp didn't mean anything, you know, but like maybe that's it. I don't understand why he's ranked that low. I think On3 is on to something. I mean, to me, he is a 50 to 75 kind of kid. Even with some of the things that I got to coach out of him, he's got tools, Ryan, length, size. I mean, his catch radius is him and Carnell to me. And Braylon James have 3 of the better catch radiuses in the entire class, not just the Notre Dame guys, but the entire class. But that speed and that athleticism is, I mean, dude, that is impressive. Unless his like highlight film is completely sped up, I actually thought that at first because like that kick return where he kind of hurdles and then I was like, no, that's got to be because you can speed these highlight films up. So what I often do is you got to watch the referee. If that referee's like feet are going, you know, that thing is sped up. You know what I mean?
That happens all the time, man. I remember when Lake Seastrunk was coming out, right? And he ended up at Baylor. He had the sickest high school highlight tape, but then I realized quickly, I was a younger guy at that point. I was like, oh, they fast forwarded a lot of these highlights. That's the fastest
referee I've ever seen in my life. That referee needs a scholarship. You know what I mean? Like, you got to look for those kind of things. You look for when people raise their arms up. Do they go up like really fast? You know, those kind of things. I didn't see any of those in Tyler Williams' film. I mean, he just looks like he's really fast. I wonder if I don't know how much like 7-on-7 he's done. I believe he's a track guy. I believe he also is a basketball player. I believe he's also a pretty good basketball player. So I think maybe that's it, where maybe he just hasn't had the exposure that maybe some people want. I guess, to evaluate that. But when I watch this kid run, Ryan, I see a kid that has really special, really special ability as a track kid. So I'm gonna try to find some things here to see if we can find out maybe why he is not ranked like he should be. But I just don't see a lot of kids that have that all around skill set that he possesses.
I mean, he's a greyhound, man. He's just long, lean, and can run for days. Like, he is that dude, man. Like, he really, I mean, again, I think that, and I agree. I think the hands are. I don't think they're bad.
They're inconsistent.
They're inconsistent. Yeah. I think that's kind of why Equanimeous popped in my head, because there was also times with Equanimeous where you're like, oh, that dude plucks it easy, and then there were other plays where you're like, oh, that's a bad concentration drop. Like, that's not
like makes that great catch in 2016 against USC in the end zone late in the game, and then just drops like 2 balls he should have caught against Georgia in 2017.
Exactly.
Just like, come on,
man.
But this kid kind of fights the ball at times, but then other times he just snatches it out of the air. And he's an impressive athlete. Final guy, as we get to wrap this up. Well, let me say this: recruiting wise, with Tyler Williams, Notre Dame is recruiting him. They like him. He has expressed interest in them, but there just hasn't been a lot of movement as far as getting him up on campus. And so I think they're not thinking that he's as into them as he says he is, but they're still trying to recruit him, which is why we have him on the board. Because if they can convince him to, he's the kind of kid. We were asked a question earlier today. Who are the kids that can kind of out of nowhere, maybe you might have a better shot with if you get a Dante Williams? This is the kind of kid that I think maybe you could, if you're able to get Dante Moore, this is the kind of kid that maybe all of a sudden, like, hey man, like, this is why we want you to visit, Dante Moore, look what Tyler Buckner's doing. I'm hoping that he's one of those kids that just drags his recruitment on. Because I think that's the thing where if Notre Dame is the team on offense, I think they're going to be this year, along with getting Dante Moore. I think this is the kind of kid you could really get some movement and traction with. I've heard he's a good student. I don't know that for a fact. I've heard from some people that he's a good student, but he's a really good player.